We are still looking at the examples of using the sum and difference identities. We're on example number 2. And in this particular case, we're going to be using the sign identity. And secondly, I'm going to use the 9 pi over 12 plus the 14 pi over 12. You can use 11 pi over 12 plus 12 pi over 12, but I have a reason for wanting to use that, my second choice there. So I'm going to rewrite this as sine of 9 pi over 12 plus 14 pi over 12. And we can rewrite this here. So this is going to be sine of, instead of 9 pi over 12, we're going to put in the 3 pi over 4 because we need values on the unit circle. And 14 pi over 12 is the 7 pi over 6. And then we can go back and we can use our formula there. We're going to be using this first one. Sine of A plus B. So notice that the plus is on top and the plus is on top. So we're going to be adding these together. So this is going to be, I hope I have enough space. I don't think so. I'm going to write underneath it. Sine of 3 pi over 4 cosine of 7 pi over 6 plus cosine of 3 pi over 4 sine of 7 pi over 6. And the reason that I picked these values is because we go back into 3 pi over 4 being in the second quadrant, 7 pi over 6 being in the third quadrant. So we need to watch out for plus and minus signs. Luckily enough, sine is positive in the second quadrant, so this is going to be the square root of 2 over 2. The cosine of 7 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6 is in the third quadrant, cosine is negative in the third quadrant, and we get the square root of 3 over 2. Then again, 3 pi over 4 is in the second quadrant, so the cosine of 3 pi over 4 is going to be negative the square root of 2 over 2. And then sine of 7 pi over 6. 7 pi over 6 in the third quadrant, sine is negative in the third quadrant, and it's going to be 1/2. But now we can finish the problem here. And what happens, again, we multiply the numerators, the tops of the fraction, and the denominators, the bottom. We get negative the square root of 6 over 4. Then it's negative times negative is positive. And square root of 2 times 1, square root of 2 over 4. I typically write the answer like this. But sometimes on a more standardized version, maybe even on Adventum, they may write the answer as the square root of 2 minus the square root of 6 over 4. So I'll put an or, just in case that's the format that you see it on Adventum. But as we take a look at this last one here, and again, we found a couple values. I'll just use my first value of what adds to be pi over 12, in this case what subtracts to be pi over 12. So when we look down here, might be nice if you could see it now. Let's say that we're going to deal with tangent of 3 pi over 12 minus 2 pi over 12, which ultimately means that we're dealing with, if we can see it here, got to make sure you can see it. So this is going to be the tangent of pi over 4 minus pi over 6. We go back, we fill in our formula. Remember, with regards to the tangent, since we're subtracting, that's on the bottom here, so we're going to be subtracting in the top of the fraction, and we're going to be adding in the bottom of the fraction. So this is going to become tangent of pi over 4 minus tangent of pi over 6 And then down here in the denominator, it's going to be 1 plus tangent of pi over 4 times tangent of pi over 6. So what we need to know is, well, what's the tangent of pi over 4 and what's the tangent of pi over 6? And when we come over here to fill that in, tangent of pi over 4 is 1, tangent of pi over 6 is square root of 3 over 3, and then it's going to be 1 plus 1 times square root of 3 over 3. So if we write this just a little bit better, what's going to happen is we're going to have to combine these, and we're going to have to combine these. And when we combine these, that's going to require a common denominator. So this is going to be 3 over 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3. And again, we can rewrite this 1 as 3 over 3, fancy form of 1, remember, plus 1 times the square root of 3 over 3. So now, when we write it in a good format here, or at least a more workable format, we get 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3, and we have 3 plus the square root of 3 over 3. And I'm going to go old school version here because we're dividing. So 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3 divided by 3 plus the square root of 3 over 3. When dividing, don't ask why. Flip the second one and multiply. So this becomes 3 minus the square root of 3 over 3 times 3 over 3 plus the square root of 3. And what happens here are that the 3's cancel out. We get 3 minus the square root of 3, 3 plus the square root of 3. And that's all well and good, except that we have a square root in the denominator. So we need to get rid of that square root in the denominator. And what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by the conjugate. Remember that the conjugate says that you change one sign. So we ultimately are going to be multiplying by the fancy form of 1, but this is going to be 3 minus the square root of 3. And if we multiply the bottom of the fraction by 3 minus the square root of 3, we're going to have to multiply the top of the fraction by 3 minus the square root of 3. This is the fancy form of 1 here. And ultimately what that's going to require us to do is to double distribute or to FOIL on both the top and the bottom of the fraction. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 3 square root of 3, minus 3 square root of 3, plus, because it's negative times negative, square root of 9. And I'm fine if you already wrote 3 there. We're going to have to simplify that. It's going to be almost the same down here. It's going to be 9 minus, here's where the 9 came from, minus 3 square root of 3 plus 3 square root of 3. Positive times negative is negative square root of 9. So it doesn't look like it helped much, but if we look here on the top of the fraction, got to be able to see it, we end up with 9 minus 6 square root of 3. These are like terms here, and the square root of 9 is 3. Down here in the denominator, we have a minus 3 square root of 3, a plus 3 square root of 3. Those cancel out, and we get 9 minus the square root of 9, which is 3. So 9 plus 3 is 12, minus 6 square root of 3 over 6. No more square root in the denominator, that's good, but our last step here is to notice that 12 and 6 and 6 all have a common factor of 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and we don't need to write the 1, and in fact Edmentum doesn't like us to write the 1. And then 6 divided by 6 is 1. So our sum, or tangent of pi over 12, equals 2 minus the square root of 3.